To begin, I'd like to thank Minister of Natural Resources, Mr. Dodson, the organizers of this symposium, and all the distinguished participants for the opportunity to speak here today on behalf of Kosmos Energy at this important event. For those of you who are not familiar with Kosmos, we are an international oil and gas company focused on offshore exploration in frontier and emerging basins. Kosmos was formed in 2003, and our U.S. headquarters is located in Dallas, Texas, in the United States. And we currently have production offshore Ghana and ongoing exploration activities offshore Morocco, Mauritania, Senegal, Portugal, Sao Tome, and also offshore Suriname. Kosmos has been active in Suriname since 2011. Here we have 2 deep water blocks covering over 11,000 square kilometers and located about 200 kilometers offshore. In Paramaribo, we have a small office currently employing 3 local employees, which will grow in size to meet future operational needs. To date, we have acquired both 2D and 3D seismic data over blocks 42 and 45. And later this year, beginning in August, we will acquire an additional 5,000 square kilometers of 3D seismic data. As data analysis and interpretation activities progress, we anticipate commencing exploratory drilling operations in the near future. We pursue our core business, the exploration and production of hydrocarbons, according to a set of business principles focused on advancing the societies in which we work and providing a positive impact on local communities. These 6 business principles are recognition of our responsibility as stakeholders, or to stakeholders, which include shareholders, host governments, local communities, civil society organizations, and our business partners. 2, ethical conduct, which includes anti-corruption compliance and contract transparency. 3, respect for our employees, which includes providing a safe working environment that encourages our people to reach their full potential. 4, environmental stewardship, which means taking appropriate steps to protect the environment and minimize the potential impact of our operations. 5, respecting our commercial relationships, which includes treating contractors fairly and protecting confidential information. And 6, social responsibility, which includes doing our part to make sure our activities benefit host communities through local content expenditures, direct investment, and CSR projects. For example, in Suriname, between 2012 and 2016, we have conducted over 26 CSR projects in all 10 districts, focusing primarily on technical, vocational, environmental, and healthcare initiatives. By year-end 2016, total gross CSR expenditures by Kosmos and our partner Chevron will amount to over $1 million US. A natural extension of these business principles is Kosmos's commitment to support the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, commonly referred to as EITI. As has been described by previous speakers this morning, EITI promotes transparency and accountability in the use of resource revenues. Ultimately, EITI practices support ethical conduct, responsible and auditable distribution of revenues, and minimize the risk of corruption. From our perspective, countries that adopt EITI principles offer a more attractive investment climate over those which do not. Thus, Kosmos is a part of EITI as a sponsoring company, and in our global operations, we support EITI practices in member countries and advocate the adoption of EITI in non-member countries. This slide lists some of the ways Cosmos has supported EITI initiatives in various countries where we have operations. Mauritania committed to EITI in 2005 and issued its first report in early 2007. Cosmos has been active offshore Mauritania since 2012, and our country manager is a representative on the EITI multi-stakeholder group since the time we entered the country. As a member of the multi-stakeholder group, we have helped drive the EITI process, especially as it relates to the oil and gas industry. We have been active offshore Senegal since 2014. Senegal joined EITI in 2012 and issued its first report in October 2015. In Senegal, Cosmos worked with EITI to host a workshop in November 2015 for civil society groups focused on the oil and gas industry. In addition, when a 24-person delegation from Senegal, comprised of EITI committee members, parliamentarians, and civil society groups, visited their counterparts in Ghana to learn about their experiences embracing transparency, Cosmos was invited to participate in the discussion. Also worth noting is the fact that in 2015, Cosmos' exploration activity resulted in a major offshore discovery of natural gas, which straddles the maritime boundary between Mauritania and Senegal. As we pursue the commercial development of this gas resource, with the enthusiastic support of both governments, we are pleased to know that revenue management will follow principles of accountability and transparency to the benefit of peoples of both Mauritania and Senegal. In late 2015, Cosmos entered several exploration blocks offshore São Tomé and Príncipe. São Tomé and Príncipe committed to EITI in 2005 and issued its latest report in 2015. Cosmos has met with the multi-stakeholder group and was recently invited to join. In Suriname, we sponsored an EITI workshop in 2015, and earlier this year, we sponsored attendance by the Ministry of Natural Resources, Ministry of Finance, and a representative from civil society to the 2016 EITI conference in Lima, Peru. Now let me share the story of Ghana's entry into the EITI community. It is interesting to note that Ghana, like Suriname, is rich in natural resources, and the mining industry has been a major part of both countries' economies for many decades. Ghana's initial steps to implement EITI began in 2003 in consideration of mining industry revenues. The public statement of its commitment to implement EITI was made by the President of the Republic at the first EITI conference in London in 2003. This public statement was publicized through national media and was also placed on the government website. During 2004, a senior government official was appointed to lead the implementation of an EITI secretariat, which was established in the Ministry of Mines and Energy, and which was later moved to the Ministry of Finance, where greater capacity and resources were available for EITI implementation. Stakeholders from civil society and extractive companies were identified, and a 16-member multi-stakeholder national steering committee was formed in 2005 to oversee the implementation of EITI. Technical assistance needs were identified, and financial support was secured. Basic procedures for the implementation of EITI were agreed, and a work plan was developed. Per EITI procedures, after issuing the required public statement, and after designation of a champion to guide the initiative, and post-formation of the multi-stakeholder group, candidate countries would normally submit a formal application for candidacy to the EITI board. However, Ghana became a candidate country in 2007, although it was not required to make the formal application, since it was designated a pilot country because it was one of the first countries to participate in EITI. As Ghana advanced towards EITI implementation in response to activity in the mining sector, the petroleum sector grew quickly in importance as the pace of offshore exploration accelerated. Cosmos began operations in Ghana in 2006 and drilled the first major offshore oil discovery in Ghana in 2007. This discovery, which was later renamed the Jubilee Field, began production in 2010 and is currently producing over 100,000 barrels of oil per day. In 2007, this major offshore discovery opened a new chapter in Ghana's extractive economy and further encouraged implementation of EITI practices of revenue transparency and accountability. As extractive activity continued to flourish, Ghana made significant strides to implement EITI and achieved full compliance status in 2010. To date, Ghana has produced at least 9 EITI reports on its mining sector, and beginning in 2010, has produced at least 2 EITI reports on the hydrocarbon sector. It should be noted that one key to Ghana's successful early implementation of EITI was the ability to leverage capacity and resources from the Ministry of Finance. The core EITI team was located in the Policy Analysis and Research Division of this ministry, which was charged with revenue tracking and therefore had the ability to develop viable terms of reference, work plans, and goals. The makeup of the EITI National Steering Committee was also key, since it contained representatives from technical, regulatory, and revenue institutions, which were required to ensure effective data collection and analysis. Constructive and open interaction between committee members and civil society was also paramount to ensure transparency and accountability. It is interesting to note that as an early participant in EITI, Ghana also added innovations to the EITI process. Specifically, Ghana was the first EITI country to implement and report mineral revenue payments and receipts on a subnational level. Subnational reporting allowed oversight to ensure that mining communities received correct amounts from governments, and those revenues were used for their intended purposes in these communities most immediately affected by mining operations. Over the years, Ghana's EITI reports have identified suboptimal practices, leading to reforms and key policy initiatives and changes which ensure that revenues from royalties are directed to projects which are consistent with the development priorities established by the people of the impacted communities. Along this line, EITI reports have included guidelines for the implementation of corporate social responsibility programs, which further accentuates the relevance and impact of EITI at the local community level. Thus, Ghana's implementation of EITI has transcended the core objective of reconciliation of extractive industry receipts and payments to also include collection of data and expenditures relevant to CSR projects and to ensure utilization of royalties in local communities most affected by extractive operations. Also worth noting is that during 2013, the Ghana EITI Steering Committee engaged with the Ghana Exploration and Production Industry Forum to further improve EITI reporting processes. This dialogue resulted in hydrocarbon extractive companies, including Cosmos Energy, to agree to make public their petroleum agreements by providing links to them on company websites. This example demonstrates that EITI not only contributes to the transparent reporting of revenues and payments, but also provides a forum for governments, companies, and civil society to regularly meet and better understand each other's priorities and concerns while reducing political tensions and distrust. Thus, Ghana's story is a good example of successful implementation of EITI thanks to clear and robust support by the country's political leadership. This implementation was only possible through the constructive engagement and participation by governments, extractive companies, and important elements of civil society. It should be clear to all that all stakeholders ultimately benefit from the implementation of EITI. Governments benefit from additional foreign investment, having created a climate of transparency and legitimacy. Extractive companies become more willing to invest due to reduced risk of corruption. And the ultimate beneficiaries are the local populations and communities who are most likely to benefit from improved transparency and accountability in the collection and disbursement of revenues. However, some may ask, is there any quantifiable evidence of economic benefit from EITI implementation? For this, we point to a 2013 study by the University of Heidelberg, which studied 81 developing countries over the period from 2004 to 2011. The study concluded that reforms implemented with the commitment to EITI signal a country's efforts towards increased transparency, cracking down on corruption, and improving governance, which is rewarded in the marketplace by increased foreign direct investment. Specifically, the research showed that becoming an EITI candidate country increased the share of foreign direct investment inflows to GDP on average by 2 percentage points. And this is a substantial increase given that the average share of foreign direct investment to GDP in the sample was 4%. In conclusion, at Cosmos, we are pleased to be a sponsoring company of EITI, and in this role, we encourage and support the implementation of EITI principles. Thus, we stand in support of Suriname's initiative to join the EITI community.